Thora Hjo is an Icelandic poet, and Magma is her first novel, translated into English from Icelandic by Meg Match and published by Picador. Now, Picador is a pretty big UK publisher, but I don't think I've ever read a book from Picador that I didn't really love. They are stellar. They have all of the chops and an eye for talent and an eye for good literature that all of my favourite indie presses have, and that's something that I really adore about Picador. So when they sent me a review copy of this, which actually came out back in July, so you can pick it up now, oof, I was excited. I just didn't know when I was going to get to it, and I finally have. Magma is not an easy read. I kind of want to start there. This is a very poignantly powerful feminist novel, but it's not only feminist. This is a novel about toxic relationships, which can take any form. You can find a toxic relationship in any male-female relationship, in any male-male, female-female, whatever kind of relationship. People are toxic. People have the power to be dangerous and manipulative. They have the power to gaslight and punish you and twist your mind and abuse you in different ways. And Magma covers all of that in a really chilling way. This is not the finished cover, by the way. This is a review cover. The finished cover is really pretty. I'll put it here. There. It's really nice. Magma is actually the second powerfully feminist and poignant and angry novel by an Icelandic woman that I've enjoyed in the last year or two. The other being Miss Iceland by Eva Ola Olafsdóttir. I think that's her name, I can't remember. Miss Iceland is really good. I mentioned it on my best books of 2020 list, I think, so check it out. And read it for Whit Month. It's a really good book to read for Whit Month, as is this. At the time of recording, it is Whit Month, Women in Translation Month, so Magma is a really appropriate book, and I said in my Whit Month video that I would be reading this, so I did. I actually ended up reading this in a single sitting. I didn't expect that, but the book is 200 pages-ish, and as you can see, some of the chapters are really tiny. Single paragraphs, half a page. It is an enormously quick read. It would probably take the average reader like an hour, but I'm a miraculously slow reader, so it took me about 2. For all of the reading I do, for the fact that I always have my nose in a book, I'm actually a really slow reader, but that's beside the point. Magma tells the story of a woman in Reykjavik who is in a relationship. The woman is called Lilia, and I'm not sure quite how old she is. I think she's probably in her early 20s, around the age of 20, kind of university age. She's in a relationship with a young man who's a bit older than her. I picture him maybe in his late 20s, dancing around 30, and we never get his name. His name is not important. He is this horrible, toxic thing. The story is told from her perspective. Lilia is writing this very intimately, almost as like a diary. These chapters are tiny little 1, 2, 3 page vignettes. These little snippets into her life. Time sometimes jumps forward a little bit, sometimes it flashes back to something about her childhood or his childhood that she's recently learned, something that gives a little bit of context when is necessary. But for the most part, we are just kind of slowly making tiny little jumps forward through time as their relationship blossoms and develops. She moves in with him in this horrible basement apartment in Reykjavik where he lives with this really smelly, nasty little loser. And the only other person that you ever meet is his childhood friend who read a book on how to pick up girls and invites them out to be his wingman, and things go horribly wrong. So these are all just rubbish men, and Lilia is forced to just be around them. But through very clever manipulation and mind games and gaslighting, he has managed to convince her to stick around, and Lilia is at first painted as a very strong woman. Right at the very beginning, we learn that Lilia, before being in this relationship with this guy, actually travelled around Central and South America, where she happily slept around and had fun. And the first thing he does is slut-shame her. The first thing he does is tell her that she's gross for sleeping around, and he feigns jealousy as a means of controlling her and keeping her grounded and changing her approach to sex to something more akin to his, which is more conservative. So he slut-shames her, that's the first thing he does. And then from there comes the mental and emotional abuse, the gaslighting. But it's all very slow. Something he does all the way through the book is constantly encourage her to have sex with him at least once a day, slowly introducing other kinks that he has, other things that he wants to try to do that she's not comfortable with, things that in fact could cause her harm. And these are things that a lot of people ask their partners to do, and she feels obliged. She feels that she has to do it in order to please him, because now suddenly she feels like she just can't live without him. She suddenly feels, I don't know if indebted is the right word, but she's kind of addicted to him. And as the book goes on, she starts to fall apart mentally. She falls into depression. And I won't tell you where that leads, because that would be to spoil things, and I don't want to spoil the impact of the book. But she struggles. Right from page 1, you can see her struggling with this guy. And this is very much a kind of warning against predatory, abusive, toxic, manipulative people. Often they are men. Certainly not always. In fact, I've had toxic relationships in the past with women, and I've had toxic friendships with men and women in the past. People who have not treated me as well as afterwards I realized I deserved to be treated. I think a lot of us can relate to that. And that's why Magma is so important. I want to call it a feminist novel, and it very much is, but that doesn't mean that toxic relationships are exclusive to male-female relationships, as I said at the beginning. So if you are not a straight woman, that does not mean that this will not affect you in a very powerful way. It certainly did to me. Little things reminded me of relationships in my life, including things that I've done to other people. Because a lot of us have been abusive or gaslighting in a very small way without realizing it. I'm certainly not perfect. A lot of us are not perfect. And so if you keep your mind open, you can perhaps read a few snippets, sentences, paragraphs here and there and go, shit, I once did something like this. When I was 18, when I was 20, when I was stupid, when I was naive, when I was careless, when I didn't think about other people as much as I should have. But this guy, he's aware of it. He's enjoying it. He's not innocent. He's a bastard. He's a monster. And he knows what he's doing. And all the while, all the way through, you get progressively more angry towards him because he's quite unforgivable. And she, as is typical of a lot of these relationships, she knows that. She can see how dangerous and toxic he is. She is also aware of how kind of pathetic she's becoming, how vulnerable, and how suddenly she's become so dependent on him, whereas she wasn't that kind of person before. And she can't seem to stop herself. She's falling and falling with nothing to grip onto to steady her. Really, really smart character writing. Thora Hjo really understands these types of relationships and the kinds of people that fall into them, which is most of us, to be honest. We're all capable of falling into these kinds of relationships, as Lilia shows, because she begins a far more capable person. I could talk about this book for hours, honestly, and I don't want to spoil things. I really want you to find out what's so wonderful about it for yourself. But it's a powerful, powerful book, and it is very short, I promise. 200 pages, but it absolutely flies by because it's these tiny little snippets, little kind of diary-esque moments. And Meg Match, or Matic, I'm not sure, sorry, has done a really amazing job of translating this from Icelandic. It is a powerfully written, powerfully translated book. Every single word lands with a kind of thud. It feels like every word is a thick and dense pebble that drops on the floor again and again, and they actually get bigger and heavier as the book goes on. Really powerful stuff. The book will make you angry. It might make you cry. It'll certainly boil your blood a little bit. It did for me. And it teaches us a lot. I think that this is a worthwhile book for young people to read, young women especially. No, scratch that. Young men who have the potential to be abusive and don't know it yet would really benefit from reading this and realizing this is a route that they could go down. It's a route that a lot of us can go down. I'm not being holier than thou here at all. Life is complicated, relationships are complicated, but I'm also not going to be an apologist for abusive people. Never in my life would I do that. I just think sometimes we aren't aware of our abusive relationships, whichever side we're on. But to be clear here, this guy is a monster. There is nothing redeemable about him. I want to make that clear. This is a great book to read for Whit Month because it is written by a woman, it is translated by a woman, and it is about a woman falling into a toxic relationship. And for that reason, it is a powerful read. It's not easy though. It'll make you angry, it'll make you sad. Just bear that in mind. But please read it. Magma is amazing. I read it before bed. That wasn't a wise move. subscribe for books.